Today we're talking about the role of the second AC or second assistant camera with the fabulous Simone Williams. Welcome to the show, Simone.
Thank you for having me, Tammy.
So I like to dive into how did you find your love for camera? I mean, did you always want to be in the camera department?
I know I came to LA to be a writer, but I felt like, okay, I want to be a writer. I want to direct the stuff that I write. I should probably know camera. And so I was working on, the strike is over so I can say companies now. I was working on Shrink Next Door with Apple TV, and I started shadowing the first AC. And I was like, hey, I'm really interested in knowing more about camera. I'm interested in like maybe doing a few jobs in the camera department. I know this. I started listing off framing and like anamorphic lenses, just anything I had learned on YouTube. And she was like, I see you're a hard worker. I like the questions that you ask on set. So we have to hire through either the WarnerMedia Access program or the Array program. Apply for both and I'll hire you. And so I did. And she hired me through the WarnerMedia Access program. And then I did Our Flag Means Death Season 1. And then I did Black Lady Sketch Show Season 3. And I just did 3 and 4 later. But I started to realize that I really liked cinematography and the storytelling of the camera as a separate thing from the script. And I was like, oh no, I love it here. And so I decided that I felt like I could do camera as a career, be a DP of other people's projects, and then write and direct my own when that time comes.
Wow, what opportunities you got in even before you got into the program? I mean, how did you get into Shrink?
I got into Shrink because I went to school at Florida A&M University. I was in FAMU Focus Film Club. And my friend Jasmine Johnson connected me with Stevie Rain Warren, who works in New Orleans at Novak. And she's also a key decision maker in WarnerMedia Access to Action. And so she connected me with her, and I asked her, like, who should I know in the industry? She connected me with another lovely lady whose name is escaping me right now. And she hired me onto the show.
Wow.
So it's the telephone of Los Angeles.
So it's really who you know and who knows who.
Very much.
Right.
Very much no. But as like daunting as that is, I'm starting to learn it's very easy to know people. Because you know one person, and you talk about yourself a little bit, and they're like, oh, that sounds like my friend, this person. And then you know them. Especially the freelance nature of it. You just meet so many people.
Yes.
It's not who you know here. It's just who do you know? Because everyone's so interconnected.
I know. It's so great. It's the 6 degrees. You have a 6 degrees to probably a lot of people.
It's like 2 degrees.
I love that.
2 degrees. I learned that I have a 2-degree separation from Beyonce, and I'm like, oh. She'll never know me, but it's fine.
Well, you never know. You never know because your second degree could talk about you. Say, hey, bring my name up. And there you go. No, that would be really great.
Not knock on wood. I want that to happen.
Yeah. Well, one day. I mean, hey, you're not dead yet.
Nah.
So I was curious, like, okay, so you applied for the program, the WarnerMedia Access program, as a camera intern. Can you just tell me how, like, what's the process of applying and then what do you do once you get in? Congratulations that you got in.
It was very exciting. I was surprised because I applied and then I saw there was like a list of different categories that you have to fit into to be able to apply. And like there are different programs for people who are like trying to get into the industry who've experienced homelessness, people trying to get into the industry who like are veterans, all these different categories of people or programs that are prerequisites to get into the program. And my college was randomly one of the categories. I was like scrolling. Oh, I went to FAMU, clicked it, and that's what got me in. It was very, very random. But yeah, that was one of the prerequisites. And then they just put you on set. And I think the fact that I had already been on one set, which meant I know like walkie etiquette and things like that, made them comfortable putting me on set. But I knew nothing about camera, nothing about my job as a intern was basically utility work, which was batteries and monitor hookups, neither of which I knew. I didn't know how the camera department flowed. It was very overwhelming like the first 2 weeks. But after you get into the flow of it, you're on a union set, you're operating at union level. It was stressful, but it was very, very worth it. I learned a lot on that set very quickly. They also kind of act as your agents. So they get you on one show, and because they're trying to get you to 60 union days instead of the normal 30, they put you on another show after that to complete the rest of your days. So you're pretty taken care of for a couple months, which is really, really nice.
Well, and to work on high-end productions. I mean, you're not working on a bunch of short films, by students. You're actually in the world you one day want to be a part of.
Exactly. And one thing I sometimes get nervous about is when you're making a thing on your own, you're like, is this the way to do it? So to my first experience, to be seeing how things go is very helpful, because then when I'm, on non-union sets doing people's short films, I know, okay, I'm working efficiently. This is the way things should go. I'm doing what I'm supposed to, basically.
Yeah. And you're also leveling up every other show you work on. So if you work on a short film and you're at this level, then you're teaching at that level too.
Exactly.
Which is great.
Exactly.
Yeah. What are the primary responsibilities of a second AC on set?
Okay. If you don't have a digital utility, which sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, your jobs as a second AC are monitors and wireless.
Hooking them up, putting them together, right?
Hooking up monitors, wireless, making sure Village and all the producers are able to see picture and it's clear and it's not laggy and it's like reliable. You're in charge of batteries, making sure the cameras never die, making sure everything stays charged. You are in charge of slating, which is what most people, know it for. You are also in charge of where the first AC is in charge of like the camera itself and a lot of like the tech and the moving of the camera. You're in charge of the support things. So if you're on sticks, if you're on a slider, you're helping move that because it's a 2-person job.
Now, I was just thinking about that to separate. Do you change lenses or the first AC changes the lenses?
The first AC changes the lens, but the second AC brings the lens.
Okay.
So you're also a runner for a lot of equipment. So they might be working on something and something's going on with the camera and they're like, can you bring me this cable? You need to know where everything is to be able to run equipment back and forth and help in those tech moments. Although it's not your primary responsibility to be the techiest person in the room.
And then you swap out the media cards as well, right?
The first AC usually swaps out the media card.
Okay. But then you're transporting them to DIT if they have one.
Yep, absolutely.
Or you're becoming that.
which I do. Very frequently become that.
Right. So how does the role of the second AC differ from the first AC? Like you had said, they handle the camera. They also focus pull. You don't do that. So what?
You don't focus pull.
Yeah. So, and are you working closely with the DP, the first AC, or both?
You're working closest with the first AC because not only are they like in charge of the camera, in charge of the tech, usually the DP or the operator is speaking directly to the first AC about what needs to happen, and then you're helping. So second AC is very much a support role. Whatever needs to get done, that's what I'm doing. Whereas the first AC is pulling focus, sometimes keeping an eye out for anything weird going on in the background of a shot, any glares, any flares they're seeing, making suggestions as far as like, okay, do you want a Pola? I'm seeing this flare. Would you like me to shift the camera this way? The tech of the camera, all the settings. If settings are changing, that's the first AC changing that. If lenses are changing, they're the ones actually doing the change on the camera. And then I realized I forgot 2 other responsibilities, second AC. You're marking during talent rehearsals, during first team rehearsals. You're marking talent.
And why don't you just talk us through a little bit about marking talent? What does that mean? How do you do it?
Right. So because there's multiple takes of a shot, you want talent to land pretty much in the exact same place that they were. So your job during like rehearsals is to mark where people landed and were like, okay, this feels right. This looks right in frame. And once it starts to feel like, okay, everyone's good with this placement, you just mark where they're at with paper tape as quickly, quietly, not in the way. Don't let talent trip over you as possible.
And then is there a specific color? Because sometimes they use different colors. Do you pick a color for one talent and pick a different color for a different talent?
Yep. You usually keep one color per talent so that when they walk in, they're just looking for that spot. And then there's also different situations where you have to mark a little differently. You can't always use the big T's. If we're seeing the floor, you can cut tiny triangles that like are kind of invisible to the camera, but very visible in the color for your talent. If you're outside, sometimes you might use natural marks. So like a little stick that's like in a direction that doesn't look like a mark. I've used leaves, make little spots in chalk. If you're in tall grass, they have like these tall kind of like plumy marks.
Wow.
Yeah, just hard marks if you're like in dirt, like metal tees.
Well, that's interesting. And now, is there any key technical skills required for this role?
For a second AC overall?
Yeah.
I feel like a knowledge of camera equipment is the most helpful thing. When I first started second ACing, I hadn't used a lot of cameras, and I was like in charge of monitors and batteries, so I was away from the camera and I was so busy trying to understand this role, I didn't take the time to learn the cameras that I was touching. So knowing different cameras and knowing the parts of a camera, the different plates on a that go on a fluid head or whatever different kind of head you're using, and the multiple names for it, because there's probably 2 or 3 different names for every single piece of camera equipment. So just learning, okay, that's what my first AC calls this thing. I know where it is. When they ask for it, I can get it quickly. If I don't exactly know yet because I'm early in the game or I haven't had a lot of experience with this kind of build, I know what questions to ask so that later I'm the most helpful. Paying attention to what the build looks like so that they're like, oh, this cable is broken. I can, matchy.
Right.
Out. But just the understanding of equipment is the most important, most helpful thing.
And I guess the more that you know about the lenses, how to put them on the camera, holding the camera, moving the tripod or hooking the monitor up and getting everything to work, and then also problem solving if it doesn't work, then is it easier to step into the first AC if you wanted to do that? The more you know, then have you ever had a situation where you got bumped in?
I feel like because the first and second work so closely together, the only way to get bumped in is if the first isn't there. So usually it's like sometimes I've known more techie things and more tips and tricks than a first AC. But we're a team.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah, so it's like we are around this camera trying to figure out what's going on and tech it, for lack of a better word. I feel like the leap from second to first isn't that scary if you have a full knowledge of cameras, because then it's just the skill of pulling focus and knowing how to talk to people. Because on a union set, usually the A camera first is also in charge of making sure everybody has their proper paperwork, being the liaison for the camera team to all other departments. So it's, to me, more about the skill of pulling focus and the responsibility of being in charge of the camera team flowing smoothly, because the operator is focused on operating and the DP is focused on creating the images, talking to lighting, all this different stuff. And the pieces of a moving camera team, that falls on the first AC to make sure that flows.
Yeah, and there's a whole toolkit that they need as the first AC. I saw the stand. Sometimes they bring their own monitors. There's a whole setup and the focus pull. Are there any common duties that are done by the second AC in pre-production, or pretty much you're on at when production starts?
You usually get like a day of prep. And if they're trying not to give it to you, fight for it, because it'll make your first day so much smoother. And that is your time to learn all the equipment. You're there helping your first AC test everything, build the cameras. That's literally the best time ever to get familiar with the equipment. You're labeling everything so that it's quick to find. Everything's organized. Just whatever you can do to think as little as possible on set is the best thing ever.
Right. So you're pretty much the organization. You set up the battery station, you set up the camera station, and you also pack it up too.
Yeah. Oh, hopefully people help, but you are usually doing the grunt of the work as far as packing up.
Now, how do you work with the DP? Do you work at all with the DP, or do you pretty much stand back? Your liaison is the first AC?
If it's like a big union set, like 3 cameras, a camera team of like 10 people, you're probably not working that close to the DP. Although in my experience with really great DPs, there's never like a distance you feel. Maybe because I'm like young and ridiculous. Sometimes I'll just walk right up to the DP if it's a good moment and just we'll talk about, oh, why'd you make that choice in the shot? Or, oh, I'm about to DP this thing. I'm thinking about using this. What do you think? Just having conversations. So it's not a distance, even though you're not working close together. I feel like camera teams are pretty tight. And that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what other departments are you working with? Probably working a little bit with Scripty and then with sound, right? Are there any other departments that you're connecting in or need to talk to?
Electric.
Oh, okay.
Electric, surprisingly. Because you're going to need power for your batteries. If you don't already, as a second AC, have your own like cube taps and power strips and things for mass power from one spot, then you're usually talking to them about how are we going to get everything powered up? Where's a safe spot for batteries? If I plug in all these millions of batteries here, is that going to like trip something for the lights that they're setting up over there? A lot of power negotiation, not power negotiations, but like negotiating power distribution with electric. You are working with Scripty as far as like notes, as far as making sure your slate is accurate so that everything matches up for post to edit as efficiently as possible. There was another department that you said.
Audio, sound.
Working with sound, because the purpose of the slate, for some people who don't know, is not only to say what scene we're on, but also to sync the sound with the actual clapping. You can't slate if sound isn't rolling. They also provide your time code boxes to make sure all the cameras have the matching time code that corresponds with the digislate. So yeah, those departments primarily.
Yeah. And then
also production, as far as, because you're organizing things, where is camera going to go? How close can I get to set? Can I have first dibs on certain spots? Because, everybody wants to be close, but it's like camera kind of has to be close in order for this to flow quickly. So.
Right. And then how many setups are happening in the room that you set up your whole camera department and now have to move it into another room?
Yeah, if you're on a smaller set, there's not a designated spot, so it's a lot of juggling of rooms that happens. Yeah.
Now, do you have a cart or anything, or what's your toolkit that you bring to set as a second AC? Anything?
I bring strictly tools like a healthy bag of, hard marks. I have a tape roll with
hard marked. What is that?
Hard marks are like metal tees.
Okay.
They're born of like these brackets that are used. I found them at Home Depot, but it's literally the same thing. Now you can buy hard T marks and they're wrapped in rubber and whatever, but mine are just T marks I found at Home Depot wrapped in tape. Perfect.
Oh, great.
So yeah, I come with my tools in a bag, which are usually hex keys, different types of attachments, different adapters for different screw types, additional screws in case we find out we need to use a different kind of screw that we didn't set up in prep. What else isn't that bad? Pancro for cleaning lenses, Kimtech wipes for cleaning lenses. Sometimes a microfiber too, because I've heard that every time you use the Pancro, a little bit of like the coating comes off. So sometimes it's like you don't need to do all of that. You can just do a little microfiber wipe. And then I have a chest pack, which has my multi-tool, another hex key, scissors, a laser tape measure, because I'm lazy and don't want to do the long one. And it's faster.
Then that's your department to do that. When you have to measure a shot, when they want to match it to another shot, you are the person doing the measuring.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, like, is it the first AC or the second AC? And it's the second AC that does that.
The second AC job is so much all the time, always.
Yeah, it sounds that way.
It's a lot of negotiating. When is the best time for me to do this? When am I not going to get in the way doing all these things that require me to be in the way, which is a very interesting job.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a job for somebody who doesn't want to just sit around, because you're always moving, which is nice. You brought your laptop to set, didn't you?
I do when I'm also like downloading, DITing, which is not really what a DIT does.
Right.
DIT.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I'm loading.
Are there any safety precautions that you have to think about for best practices for the second AC when handling camera equipment?
Lift with your knees. You're lifting a lot of very heavy things, especially like if you're getting like a proper tripod and like proper like head. This is all very heavy metal elements. So like lift with your knees, 2 hands on things, do your push-ups.
In between takes.
Closed-toed shoes, lots of stretching. Sometimes like the places you need to fit into are like a little interesting. So very comfortable shoes because you're never sitting. And you don't want to hurt your feet because not that you can't sit, but like there's no time. So you kind of need to be at peak physical at all times.
Yeah, I would think so. And then also you do a camera log and inventory. What program do you use to do that? And then who do you send that log to?
I use ZoeLog because I lose and crumple paper in the speed of everything that needs to happen. Sometimes they prefer paper logs because that's what they're used to, or because they have a certain special log set up for this project, and you accommodate that. And then you're sending it usually to the post-production supervisor. I sometimes send it to the script supervisor, and there's sometimes a producer that is kind of the production post liaison that I also send it to. And then sometimes the DP wants it just for their own personal notes of, what did I do on the shot? Do I like it? Will I tweak it for a different show? Generally, there's so much happening for the DP that you don't want to bog them down with stuff they don't need.
Right. So what goes on the camera log?
You're marking what lens was used, distance from the subject, which is also like focal distance. So sometimes you can just look at, if your first AC marks their hand unit, you can just look at what that is. Height from the ground, angle if there's a tilt.
And take number, do you put that in there too?
Yeah, take number, scene number. Sometimes if they're circling takes, if you're in ZoeLog, you can mark that as well. You're marking, I'm trying to visualize the sheet. White balance, ISO, if there's filters in, any notes that you might have on the scene. If like it was a series and we did multiple takes, but the last one is the best one because the first one had whatever in it, sometimes you mark that.
Because it is kind of interesting because it was so organized. Some of the productions I work on, I don't always see that because I'm not always a scripty, but so that was kind of really neat. It's always nice when you see how people are doing things. It's like, oh, that's good. That's really...
Yeah, because there's a million different ways. Like just recently, I've been learning all the different apps for camera control. You prepped really, really fast. You get on set, you realize you didn't give your first AC the power to roll and cut on their hand unit. You can get an app to do it because a lot of operators aren't used to doing it themselves because that's just not what they do. So you can either have your first roll it, you can roll it, just the different options that you have. You also with like RA camera control and red camera control, you are able to change the settings without walking out to the camera and tapping a bunch of buttons if the menu is not the most like user friendly. All those things are on an app, and it's just like all these little ways of making things a little faster is really cool.
Yeah, technology. So what are the typical challenges and problem-solving skills required for this role? Like, what are some of the things? Can you describe some things that have happened that and how you had to figure it out?
I'm trying to think. I've been on such great sets lately. I'm like, there's no problems.
Right.
I think the toughest thing in a lot of things is managing expectations. So you're trying to usually get ahead of any problems. So I'm like neurotically checking the camera at all times to be like, okay, is everything how it's supposed to be? Did any of the settings get bumped? The first AC is also usually doing this. You're just making sure like, okay, are there any cables on the ground that somebody could trip over? You're just preparing for all of these different things. And then when something goes wrong that nobody expects, it's being realistic about, hey, I know we're moving fast, but this is going to take about like 5 minutes to work through. So sorry about that. I'm working as fast as I can, you know?
Right. I saw like sometimes the focus pull won't be connecting to the camera. Sometimes the monitor goes off. So it's like just turn it on and off. Just, sometimes.
And the more you know about the camera to be able to help in those moments is good, because like the first AC is not always right next to the camera. A lot of them like to be off in their own little space. So
in a dark room.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're maybe watching monitor to, again, spot any issues early,
right,
and you notice like, oh, they're not getting the focus, and you look at them and they look stressed, I run to the camera immediately and I'm like, hey, on whatever walkie system I'm on, I'm like, hey, you slipped off. I'm going to recalibrate, so that they don't have to get up and do it themselves. Because again, that's just more time.
Right.
So anything to eliminate the time that it takes to do a thing, because the less time you're spending teching and setting up a shot and all these workshopping little problems that you could have, been aware of avoiding earlier, the more time people have to act and to take risks on camera and to try different things.
You are in the union now.
I am.
So could you tell us, like, since it's probably been so recent, that you could walk us through, how did you get into the union? Like, what things did you need to do to get into the union? And if you don't mind sharing, like, how much it costs to get into your union.
So me getting into the union I did it in a very non-traditional way, because the program got me in. I was also able to find someone to pay my dues through the program. People are like, how much was it?
Oh, okay. Because it's expensive.
It's a couple thousand for sure. I'm at the utility level, which allows me to utility, load, first aid, or AC in general, because they're all the same category. It says at least 5,000, and I would like a specific.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I've heard. And others, like director or something or bigger, is like 10 grand and up. So it's expensive, but that's only the due. So you have an initial due, but then you have quarterly dues.
Yeah, the quarterly isn't so bad. Probably like 200, a little less than 200 a quarter.
Now, is it based on how much you're making, or that's just the set rate?
That is flat. And then I think they also take 10% of what you earn. 10 sounds like a lot, but they take a percentage of what you also earned in that quarter, which I was surprised, because there was a period, there's been a very long period where I haven't been doing a lot of union shows, and they're taking that low. Anyone who's like wondering if it's worth it, it's extremely worth it. I would have, even if I didn't have a sponsor, I would have paid it, because not only does that allow you to do union shows, you can do features, you can do union commercials, which, like, everybody can't do commercials. I've been able to leverage that to get lots more non-union work, because LA is the kind of place where it feels like you need a cosign to do anything. So not only do you need to know somebody to get hired, but also if you're like, hey, I'm an AC. I'm really great at it. And they're like, okay, show me your IMDb. Who do you know? I don't know. Like all these different things. And I've been able to walk on shows and be like, hey, I'm in the union. Not saying what level of union I'm in, but hey, I'm in the union, and automatically whatever I say I can do, they believe.
Okay.
I'm able to do what I know how to do just with the cosign of being in the union.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, and you make a lot more money doing union work.
Yeah, when your union jobs make a lot more money. So if you do have someone who can plug you immediately onto union jobs, you make that money back so fast.
So how does one progress in the camera department?
I feel like the best way that I've been able to progress is by whatever job I'm at, whatever level position I'm on this team for, I'm doing that max of my ability. And I'm also looking at the next level and asking questions of when I was utility, I was asking second AC, okay, why do you mark like that? You have a board with all these different color tapes and you've labeled people. What is that? How do you know when to get in there and mark? What filter is that? Is there a special order to the filters? Because I see you're like very careful with it. Why are you looking at the light? Like I'm asking everything. When I'm second AC, I'm asking the first, okay, when do you switch your different rings? I see you tapping buttons. What is that? Is that an app? What's that app for? Oh, you're taking notes in it. Zoe Log, how much does that cost? What are these different focus settings? How are you able to eyeball it? Can I touch the hand unit? Different things so that I'm able to, when I feel confident in moving to the next position, I can take a smaller job at the next position. I've also been able to work really closely with AFI and the students who are about to graduate this year from AFI. That's where I got a lot of practice pulling focus because I was like, I feel like I can do this thing. Everybody here is a student. I'm either not getting, I don't think I ever got paid on any of those sets. Never got paid because you don't get paid.
Right.
But it's practice for everybody. People are practicing being DPs. People are practicing being gaffers. So I'm going to practice being a first AC. And you just get your repetitions in until you're comfortable enough to get paid for it.
How did you get connected with AFI? I mean, is there a program that you can, because you weren't going to school there. You were just helping out. So how did you go to find out who's shooting what and can you help?
Just the general who you know of Los Angeles. We run into, and yeah, just knowing I'm young on set, you're young on set, you go to film school. If you ever need help with this thing, I'm trying to practice it. And it's such a good group of people, such a good environment for learning that you're able to get repetitions in, which is the only way you're going to learn. Because theory is one thing, looking and being like, I feel like I can be a first AC, and then actually doing the thing are completely different. So you need as many opportunities to get confident in it as possible.
Yeah, and that's really great what you just said is like when you're on set, ask a lot of questions, but know the timing of asking questions,
Exactly.
of course. But yeah, I mean, that's the only way you're going to learn. And I've found on set that there's a lot of people that don't mind you asking questions and want to teach you and show you. So I think that that's really cool, you know?
I think that's a sign that you're on a good set is when you ask somebody a question about what they're doing and because they enjoy what they're doing, they're excited to talk about it with another person. And I've been lucky to run into a lot of that.
Any projects that you want to talk about that you're working on right now?
Yes. Okay. So now is a very exciting time because it's like the first time I felt like I'm able to be a writer, solidly call myself a writer while also solidly calling myself a camera person and calling myself a DP. So I wrote a short film. That short film is being produced in November, most likely. I'm a creative producer on it, and this is the first piece that I've written that will come into full production, which I'm very excited for. And then I'm also DPing a horror film in January, which I'm very excited to get. Very stylistic, very inspired by Death by Temptation, which is like a 90s Black horror movie, cult horror movie. So I'm very excited to play with lighting in that way.
That's great. And congratulations on your project.
Thank you.
That's so fun. Yeah. So any tips for future camera people that you want to leave them with?
When I was first starting, somebody told me that like there's like a triangle of things. You know, the thing where it's like you can get it fast and good, but it won't be cheap. You can get it good and cheap, but it won't be fast. That thing. There's like a similar triangle of getting the next job where it's like you can be great at the job, you can be on time and available, or you can just be great to work with. If you just work on having two of those, like when I first started, I didn't know all the techie stuff to be great at the job, but I was great to work with. I was very attentive, available, on time. Just like, even if I didn't know all the techie stuff, I was still able to be supportive. And that helps you get the next job. So I would say make sure that you are those three things in whatever percentages as you raise them all up to 100%. I would say stay interested. Even the sets that you're like, oh, this set is a mess and I'm not doing the job that I want and the budget is low. There's something in there that you can use and you can stay focused on, okay, this is what I'm here to learn on this set. And that can, one, help you keep that like positive attitude. It can help you feel like every set you're growing and being valuable. And it just makes the experience a lot better. So just stay curious, stay engaged. And keep going, because you're not always the person creating the job. It gets a little discouraging having to wait for someone to remember you, to want you. It can feel like rejection.
Right. Yeah.
They're not saying no. They're just not saying anything. So don't get discouraged by that. Keep going for it. Keep striving. Stay focused. Stay positive. Stay curious. And have tools.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. What a delight.
Yeah, I had a good time.
Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to get out there and make a film. Reach out to your local filmmakers group to get involved and connect. Please subscribe to the show if you like it, and follow me on Instagram at Tammy Magaro. Until we meet again, what's your story?